How did you feel about your time in that job?
Some days were better than others.
Mhm.
You know, there were days in which I felt professionally it was like, wow, that was great. Nailed it. Um, there were days in which I was like, I knew I missed something. And but it was like walking a high wire act every day. You
Yeah.
knew the attack. I mean, there was stupid stuff. So at one point, Politico tweets out, Spicer just tweeted out the passcode to his Twitter account. And so everyone starts piling on me. You dummy, how did you do this? How could you be so, you know, careless with, this? And I'm like, did anyone stop and look at the account? So the White House is at PressSec, and this was at, you know, poor little bunny dot 52, but it just, instead of at the name, it said they changed it to PressSec and put a picture of me. No one had actually stopped to look at it.
Mm,
And I was like, I'm getting whacked because these dummies at Politico couldn't actually read a Twitter handle. It wasn't at PressSec.
right.
And so there were days in which I can't win. Like, I'm literally getting whacked for something because a bunch of journalists don't know how to read.
Okay. I just want to ask, I know it's 7 years later, but what is your official statement, I guess, now on Covfefe?
Oh my gosh. I think the president said at the time, that's only something between you and I. And that's literally what he said to me. I called him and I said, Mr. President, there's a tweet out, and I didn't even know that I called it Covfefe at the time. I just said COVEF, whatever. And he's just like, okay, Sean, that's something that's only between you and I. And I'm like, okay, all right. And then he was just like, that's it. And I'm like, okay. I just assumed that I mean, like, the funny part is a guy who is a horrible speller,
Mhm.
um, like horrendous. Um, I was like, I thought he either was trying to type something and mistakenly hit send or slipped off, which, I'll confess I've done a few times.
Mhm.
So that's,
We all have.
but the one thing about Trump is that you don't press him. Like, I mean, I was like, okay, this is dumb. It's not like that's like some urgent, like, I need to understand your thoughts behind this policy. It was silly. It was dumb, meaning that, like, the interest, it wasn't like anyone was really trying to figure out, is this like the new code or something? Like, they knew that it was a mistake. He knew that they knew it, and he was just trying to have fun with it. And that's it. It wasn't, so I wasn't going to give it any more thought of like, God, I really need to get to the bottom of this. Like it was some Scooby Doo mystery.
Right. But instead of just saying, I think the president, misspelled something like we always do, and we're getting a laugh at it. The fact that you kind of doubled down and made it seem like it was a secret.
Well, I didn't double
Well,
down. I said what he said. They said, what did he say? And I said, here's what he said. And Rachel, that's
but
the
you
thing
could
about
see the
being,
humor in it, correct? I mean, the way that
I
the
could,
press.
but one of the things that a lot of folks in the media and the public don't fully appreciate is when you're the spokesman, it's not like you're the interpreter. You're not going, what he meant was. You will last about 8 seconds in that, right? Imagine a lawyer walking into court and saying, look, my client's going to plead not guilty, but the reality is he's pretty guilty. He did it. You'd
Right.
get fired. You'd get sued for malpractice. When you're a spokesperson, your job is to communicate the thoughts and ideas and policies and announcements of the principle that you represent. You're not going to always agree with them policy wise and personally. There are things that, but I've worked for, I don't know, 10 different members of Congress, and like that's the nature of the job,
Mhm.
right? If you work for a huge corporation, a Fortune 500, I guarantee you they make policies and decisions that you don't agree with, but you don't walk out and go, what a dumb move by the company. Like, that's the choice you make. You want to be a spokesman, you represent their views and thoughts and you communicate them. You don't get to go, I don't agree with that. I'm going to tell you what he thought. You'll be fired within 5 seconds.
Right. Why did you ultimately resign? I mean, I've read it was because of hiring Anthony Scaramucci. Is that true?
Yeah. I mean, it's a little more look, the reality was, I mean, kind of as we're batting around, there was
Mhm.
not an easy day at the office, right?
Yeah.
And I kept thinking, here's the reality. This is not going to get better, right? I could smooth it out. We had been interviewing people for a while. Um, I was filling two jobs. I was the comms director, communications director, which is the long-term piece of the job, and then the press secretary, which is the day-to-day interaction with the press. We'd been meeting with people trying to figure out how to reconfigure the press office, to get additional senior support. It was trying to do both jobs is not a winning recipe.
No.
And when the president wanted to bring in Scaramucci, Anthony he's apparently, from what I can tell, a very successful financier, an investment guy, but that doesn't mean that you are a good communicator, right? The job of the White House comms director is to understand the various departments and agencies and synthesize a lot of their actions when it comes to, how they're going to um, uh, roll out policies and interact with the White House.
Mm.
That you have to understand the role of government, the agencies, and what the White House can and can't do, the outside role of stakeholders in Congress. And as much as he might be a brilliant financier, I was like, this is not going to end well.
Mm.
It's just not going to go well. And so if I thought that by adding people onto the team was going to help, this was not something that was going to make me take something off my plate. In fact, it probably would have been harder. And
Right.
so I said, well, this is an appropriate off ramp. If the president wants a reset, we've been talking about this. How do we do this? Then I have to be responsible enough to know that it's not about me. I could have stayed in that job. He asked me to stay.
Mm.
He said, but was it good for me and was it good for him? No. And so I mean this in all honesty, that I think that sometimes when you ask God for something, he gives it to you and you have to be willing to accept it. And I had said, I need some help. I prayed about a lot of things. And I thought, this is your off ramp, dummy. You better take it.
Sure. Do you have any regrets from your time there? I mean, you talked about wanting some
Yeah.
mulligans in the past, but is there like one that stands out to you?
No, there's probably a bunch. I don't. So, like, I philosophically, I don't look at life like regrets. Are there things that I would do over? Yes. And there's a bunch of them. And frankly, I don't like, I will stop when we do this interview and say, oh my gosh, you know what I should have brought up? Okay, make a note of that the next time you talk about. I believe, in the military, at the end of a big exercise, we usually do an after action, a hot wash, 3 up, 3 down. We look at what went well and what didn't. And
Mhm.
I look at my interactions personally, professionally, the same way. So are there things I would have done differently? 100%. I don't know that I live life going, God, I regret that. There's something about the word that I feel like is a drain on you.
Yeah.
And so I personally think that I would do a lot of things differently. There's interactions. God, I look back at meetings I had and it said, why didn't honest to God, there are times when I said, I should have taken advantage of that opportunity with that person. I should have said, thank you. I should have called them afterwards. I should have brought this up. So all the time. I mean, I look at things that I wish I would have documented better. There are things that I could have been more articulate on. So yes. And I frankly think that if you want to grow as a person and professionally, that's a very healthy way to live.
Yeah. Well, you sound like a man of faith, and it sounds like I think instead of regrets, it's like things that you've learned, and as long as you take the lesson and do better the next time, that seems to apply for you.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you.